The FBI is cutting ties with another organization similar to the Anti-Defamation League. The Southern Poverty Law Center, a far-left activist group that targets conservatives and Christians, targeted Charlie Kirk one day before his assassination and included him in a hate and extremism report. Today, FBI Director Kash Patel commented on the decision to cut ties, writing, "The Southern Poverty Law Center long ago abandoned civil rights work and turned into a partisan smear machine. Their so-called hate map has been used to defame mainstream Americans and even inspired violence. That disgraceful record makes them unfit for any FBI partnership. I made it clear that the FBI will never rely on politicized or agenda-driven intelligence from outside groups, and certainly not from the SPLC. Under this FBI, all ties with the SPLC have officially been terminated." So, this organization actually lists Alliance Defending Freedom, one of the leading Supreme Court advocacy groups in DC, as on their hate list. I think they have won the most, maybe, out of all the groups that I know that, as covering the Supreme Court, that go before the justices. They have a great record. So, not outside the mainstream when you're winning Supreme Court cases. Family Research Center Council, I think there was a attack on them in 2012 from this list. Scalise shooters, he had liked, I think, this organization, and our very own Penny Nance has made the list.
Yeah, I apparently, there's levels, and I didn't make the very top level for whatever infraction I did, but apparently I wasn't trying hard enough. But yeah, it's very normal conservative organizations. This is not anyone, this is not, the KKK, although maybe they were on at some point. But it's very normal conservative organizations that they just didn't like what they said. But, I think that early on they worked on the civil rights movement, but really just jumped the shark. I think at some point, a lot of things have changed, but they had to keep going. They had to have a lot of money, rolling in, and they were willing to do anything to earn it. And I think FRC, who the shooter at Family Research Council actually got the information about FRC from this organization, planned to kill everyone in the entire office and leave Chick-fil-A sandwiches on their bodies was the plan. And this great man who was at the front desk ran towards him instead of away. I think his name was Leo, actually, and saved everyone's life. Wow. But it's very dangerous what they have chosen to do and the way that they've chosen to disparage just normal conservative people.
Yeah, and also in the wake of what's happened with Charlie Kirk, you would think that there might be thoughts to revisit and analyze their list. I do think the KKK was on it. Jason, you mentioned yesterday that you don't have a problem. I think we were talking about the Anti-Defamation League. Like, you don't have a problem seeing the FBI sever ties with these organizations. Is that true for this one too?
Yeah, that is. My understanding is that their relationship was an informal cooperation, so this is not a formal relationship. And I would agree with Penny that the SPLC has done some very good work. They bankrupted the Ku Klux Klan. They sued on behalf of prisoners for prison abuses. So they have done good work in the past. I think all of these lists sometimes can be dangerous. Turning Point had its professor watch list, which some of my colleagues at the University of Maryland would get death threats because they were on this list. So I think it's dangerous when you start, kind of putting people's information out there and, criticizing them for their First Amendment, for exercising their First Amendment rights. But in terms of this, relationship, sure, I think it can end. I think the SPLC can do their work, and the FBI should try to keep Americans safe.
Yeah, and I think we talked about how they called out Turning Point USA. One of the articles I was reading, it talks about some of the language that Charlie Kirk was using, and they said it was racist, but he was talking, I believe, about foreigners and jobs and Americans wanting their jobs. At that point, too, when we talk about these lists, like, how much is being taken out of context? Like, right. You mentioned when the work they used to do was positive. Now it looks like what's driven some of this list, and Penny, and Chris, you might want to jump in here and tell me if I'm on point here, but it seems like it has to do with if you have a traditional view of marriage, and how your views are on the LGBT community. Those are the two issues that they seem to have taken hold.
Yes, our position on sort of gender ideology and all of that was an anathema to their funders, and so that's what they've done. But there's a lot of really sketchy things about them because things have come about out about their funding, offshore accounts. So that was a good choice to sever that relationship.
Yeah, speaking of targeting conservatives, Republican rising star Arizona Congressman Abe Hamada revealed he was a subject of the Quiet Skies program, the Biden administration's weaponization of the TSA, along with Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Hamada spoke out after discovering he was targeted, saying, "The corrupt system targets those whom they fear the most. So it offers me some consolation that I joined DNI Tulsi Gabbard on the list. It is clear evidence that this program was used to target critics of Joe Biden and his fellow Democrats, who have demonstrated a blatant disregard for our civil liberties and spit on our cherished Constitution." You know, I think this is quite something that you had such weaponization of the Biden Justice Department that it went all the way into what we're looking at with like FBI, DHS, the Quiet Skies program. Chris, you and I have talked about like the lawfare that's happening. Why does this program need to be revisited altogether?
Well, it certainly sounds like it needs to be revisited altogether, and it sounds like it was almost created for targeting the enemies of the Democratic Party. And I got to say, the Southern Poverty Law Center, I didn't get much of a chance to weigh in. You guys covered it very well. But the Family Research Council, you're right. This guy walked in with bags of Chick-fil-A sandwiches who'd also been demonized by the left because they take Sunday off and let their employees spend Sunday with their family or go to church, God forbid. And the guy walked in Family Research, and you're right, and he shot a man in the lobby, and the man who was shot rushed over and took the gun away from the guy. We had the Family Research Council and Rachel Maddow had demonized Steve Scalise, and we had a Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer show up with a Chinese combat rifle and wanted to mow down the entire Republican baseball team practicing in a suicide attack, yet another Democrat Party suicide attack. The Family Research Council has ties to more terrorist attacks in the United States than I think ISIS has in the United States, and they should be called out for it. And then Charlie Kirk, targeting Charlie Kirk, and I don't think if Turning Point USA has a list of professors that do ridiculous things, I don't think any of them have been shot.
Honestly, it's actually not enough to just sever ties. I mean, the SPLC, as Chris was saying, is tied to so much violence. And just to put a finer point on it, this murderer who went to the Family Research Council, he wanted to smear the Chick-fil-A and the dead bodies of the people that had gunned down. And Alex, to your point on the Quiet Skies program, the Trump administration just terminated this program a couple of months ago.
Well, I was going to ask you, it was meant to go after terrorists, but I don't think they ever...
And you know who it went after? Military veterans like Tulsi Gabbard and Abe Hamada. So the program is absolutely doing the complete opposite of what it's intended to do. And look, you can look at the litany of TSA failures. This is just one of the highest profile.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.